Picture this. You've been seeing someone for a few months. The connection felt immediate, profound. The conversations flowed easily, the intimacy was genuine, and you felt seen in a way you haven't felt in years. Then, something shifted. His texts became less frequent. He started canceling plans. He seemed distant, preoccupied, even when you were together. You're left wondering what happened, replaying every interaction, questioning yourself. You're not imagining things. That connection you felt was real, but so is this withdrawal, and it's leaving you with that familiar ache in your chest, that confusion that keeps you awake at night, wondering why something so promising suddenly feels so uncertain. You're not paranoid for noticing the change. You're not foolish for feeling hurt. Your intuition is picking up on something real, something important. That feeling of uncertainty that's settled in your stomach isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that something is happening and you need to understand what it is. Because here's the truth. When a man pulls away from a mature woman like you, even when he seems to be falling in love, there are specific patterns at play. Patterns that have nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with his psychology. Some men don't come to love. They come to take. They come to take your time, your energy, your emotional availability, your patience, your wisdom, your stability, without ever intending to offer the same in return. They recognize the qualities in you that make you exceptional, your depth, your compassion, your emotional intelligence, and they see those qualities as resources to be consumed rather than treasures to be cherished. This isn't to make you cynical. It's to make you discerning. It's to help you recognize when you're dealing with someone who values what you offer versus someone who simply wants to take advantage of it. Before we dive deeper into this topic, I want to ask you to do a few things that will help this message reach more women who need to hear it. If this video resonates with you, please hit that like button. It tells YouTube that this content matters. Leave a comment below sharing your experience with a man pulling away. Your story might be exactly what another woman needs to feel less alone. Share this video with someone in your life who's been through this confusion. Sometimes it's easier to recognize patterns in others' situations before we can see them in our own. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future content about protecting your heart while staying open to real love. And if you're able, consider leaving a super thank you. Your support helps me continue creating content that serves women like you who deserve clarity, respect, and genuine connection. In this video, I'm going to give you the language for what you've been feeling but couldn't quite name. I'll show you the specific patterns that emerge when men pull away from mature women, even when they seem to be developing deep feelings. I'll explain the psychology behind each pattern, why it happens, what it triggers in you, and why mature women are particularly susceptible to these dynamics. Most importantly, I'll tell you exactly what to do next, how to step back with dignity, set boundaries that protect your peace, and observe consistency without chasing or abandoning your standards. This isn't about becoming jaded or closing your heart. It's about becoming wise enough to recognize when someone is worthy of the exceptional love you have to offer. Number 1. The intimacy overload pattern. This happens when a man pursues you with intense emotional and physical connection, creating a powerful bond quickly, only to retreat once that intimacy reaches a certain depth. He'll share vulnerable stories, express profound admiration, and create moments of intense connection that feel meaningful and significant. Then suddenly, he'll pull back, creating distance just when you're starting to feel secure in the connection. In practice, it looks like this. He texts you good morning and good night every day, shares details about his childhood trauma, tells you he's never felt this understood before, and plans future dates weeks in advance. Then, without explanation, the texts become sporadic, the emotional sharing stops, and those future plans go unmentioned. When you ask what's wrong, he might say, "Things are moving so fast, I need to slow down a bit." Or, "I've just been really overwhelmed with work lately," leaving you confused and wondering if you did something to push him away. The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his fear of genuine intimacy combined with his desire for it. He's drawn to the depth and emotional safety you offer as a mature woman, but he's simultaneously terrified of what that depth might require from him. When he senses the relationship is becoming serious enough to demand true vulnerability and commitment, his attachment system activates a flight response. He's not consciously trying to hurt you, he's trying to protect himself from what he perceives as the dangers of intimacy, potential rejection, loss of freedom, or the responsibility of meeting someone's needs. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you've likely done the work to become emotionally available and relationally skilled. You know how to create intimacy, how to be present, how to offer the kind of connection that most people crave. When someone responds to that by pulling away, it triggers your deepest fear that the very qualities that make you exceptional are what's driving him away. Here's how to protect yourself in this situation. First, recognize that his retreat isn't a reflection of your worth or desirability. Second, instead of chasing him or asking what you did wrong, create space for him to experience the natural consequences of his withdrawal. Say something like, "I understand you need some space right now. I'll be here if you decide you're ready to reconnect, but I won't be waiting indefinitely." Then, redirect your energy back to your own life. Reconnect with friends, focus on your hobbies, and remember that your value isn't determined by his consistency. If he returns, observe whether he takes responsibility for his withdrawal pattern or blames external circumstances. A man who's genuinely interested in growing with you will acknowledge his pattern of pulling away when intimacy deepens and will be willing to work on it. A man who's just seeking the comfort of your presence without the responsibility of connection will continue this cycle. This doesn't mean you're too much. It means he's not ready for the depth you naturally offer. Number 2. The life stage comparison pattern. This emerges when a man becomes acutely aware of the differences in your life stages, particularly if you're more established in your career, have clearer long-term goals, or demonstrate more emotional maturity. He'll initially be drawn to your stability and wisdom, but as the relationship progresses, he'll start comparing his own journey to yours, often feeling inadequate or behind. In practice, you'll notice it when he makes comments about your accomplishments that sound admiring on the surface but carry an undertone of insecurity. He might say, "You have your life so figured out," or "I wish I was as put together as you are." He'll start pulling away, not because he doesn't value what you offer, but because he's uncomfortable with what your stability illuminates about his own perceived lack of progress. When you try to reassure him, he might deflect with, "You don't understand, it's different for me," or create distance by becoming suddenly busy with projects or social commitments. The psychological mechanism at play here is what psychologists call social comparison theory, combined with attachment insecurity. When a man is in a less stable place in his life, whether financially, emotionally, or professionally, being with a woman who has achieved a certain level of maturity and stability can trigger his insecurities. Rather than seeing your accomplishments as something to celebrate or be inspired by, he views them as a spotlight on his own perceived shortcomings. This is particularly challenging for mature women because you've likely invested decades in building your life, developing self-awareness, and cultivating wisdom. You're not looking for someone to complete you or rescue you. You're looking for an equal partner who can meet you at your level. When he pulls away due to life stage comparison, it triggers your frustration because you're not asking him to be further along in his journey. You're simply asking him to be authentic about where he is and willing to grow alongside you. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to address it directly but compassionately. Try saying something like, "I've noticed that when we talk about my career or accomplishments, you seem to withdraw. I want you to know that I'm not measuring you against my journey. We all have our own timeline. What matters to me is that you're honest about where you are and what you're working toward." Then observe his response. Does he acknowledge his insecurity and work to overcome it? Or does he continue to create distance? The key is to maintain your boundaries around not dimming your light to make someone else comfortable with their own shadow. Your accomplishments are part of who you are, and a partner who's truly ready for a mature relationship will celebrate them, not feel threatened by them. If he continues to pull away, recognize that he may need more time to develop his own sense of self-worth before he can be in a relationship with someone as grounded as you. This doesn't mean you're intimidating. It means he has internal work to do before he can be the partner you deserve. Number 3. The freedom fantasy pattern. This occurs when a man, particularly one who's recently ended a long-term relationship or marriage, is drawn to the stability and depth you offer, but simultaneously fears losing his newly reclaimed or imagined freedom. He'll pursue you intensely, enjoying the emotional connection and physical intimacy, but will pull away whenever the relationship starts to feel like it might require compromise or long-term commitment. In practice, you'll notice this pattern when he makes plans enthusiastically but then cancels with vague excuses about needing space or wanting time for himself. He might say things like, "I really care about you, but I'm just not sure I'm ready for something serious right now," or "I love spending time with you, but I need to make sure I'm not losing myself in a relationship again." He'll create a push-pull dynamic that keeps you off balance, drawing you close with affection and attention, then pushing you away when you start to expect consistency or future planning. The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his fear of enmeshment combined with his genuine desire for connection. Many men who've exited long-term relationships feel a powerful tension between the comfort of partnership and the allure of independence. They're drawn to the emotional nourishment you provide as a mature woman, but they're simultaneously terrified of repeating what they perceive as the mistakes of their past, losing themselves, compromising too much, or feeling trapped. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you're typically not interested in casual connections or undefined relationships. You've moved beyond the stage of life where you're willing to invest your time and emotional energy in someone who can't offer clarity and commitment. When he pulls away due to freedom fantasies, it triggers your impatience because you recognize the inconsistency between his words of affection and his actions of withdrawal. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to establish clear boundaries around what you're willing to accept. Say something like, "I understand you're navigating your need for freedom alongside your desire for connection. What I need in a relationship is consistency and clarity about where we're headed. I'm not asking you to give up your independence, but I am asking you to be honest about what you're realistically able to offer right now." Then observe whether he's willing to have an honest conversation about his fears and whether he can offer the consistency you need. If he continues to vacillate between drawing close and pulling away, recognize that he may need more time to resolve his internal conflict between connection and autonomy. Your role isn't to help him figure out what he wants. It's to protect your own peace by not remaining in limbo, waiting for him to choose. This doesn't mean you're being demanding. It means you're valuing your time and emotional energy enough to invest them where they'll be honored. Number 4. The emotional availability test pattern. This happens when a man intentionally creates distance to see how you'll respond, testing whether you'll become anxious, demanding, or overly accommodating. He'll withdraw communication, become less affectionate, or create uncertainty about the relationship, not because he's genuinely unsure, but because he wants to gauge your reaction. In practice, this looks like him suddenly becoming busy or distant without explanation, then watching to see if you'll double text, become insecure, or offer more of yourself to regain his attention. When you express concern about his withdrawal, he might say things like, "Why are you overthinking this?" Or, "I just need some space, you're being a little intense," subtly shifting the blame to your reaction rather than his behavior. He's not creating distance because he needs it. He's creating distance to see if you'll tolerate inconsistent behavior and question your own perceptions. The psychological mechanism at play here is a form of attachment testing combined with a desire for control in the relationship. Some men, particularly those with insecure attachment styles, unconsciously test their partner's availability and boundaries as a way to determine whether they're safe to be vulnerable with. Unfortunately, this testing often backfires, creating the very insecurity they're trying to assess. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you've likely developed the capacity for emotional attunement. You notice when someone's energy shifts, when communication patterns change, when intimacy fluctuates. When he intentionally creates distance to test your reaction, it triggers your frustration because you recognize the manipulation in the pattern, even if he's not consciously aware of it. You're not interested in playing games or proving your worth through tolerating inconsistent behavior. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to respond with calm clarity rather than emotional reactivity. Instead of becoming anxious or accommodating, name the pattern without accusation. Say something like, "I've noticed that sometimes you create distance in our communication. When that happens, I'm not going to chase you or demand attention. I'll assume you need space and will focus on my own life. If and when you're ready to reconnect consistently, I'm open to that." Then follow through. Maintain your boundaries, don't overtext or become anxious, and redirect your energy to your own life and well-being. A man who's genuinely interested in a mature relationship will respect your boundaries and recognize that your self-respect is a sign of emotional health, not disinterest. A man who's testing your availability will either escalate his distancing tactics or return with increased appreciation for your emotional stability. This doesn't mean you're being cold. It means you're demonstrating that your emotional availability is a gift to be honored, not a resource to be tested. Number 5. The idealization devaluation cycle. This occurs when a man initially idealizes you, putting you on a pedestal and expressing admiration for your qualities as a mature woman, only to later devalue those same qualities when they trigger his insecurities. He'll first praise your independence, experience, and self-sufficiency, then later criticize those same traits as being too much, intimidating, or controlling. In practice, this looks like him saying things like, "You're the most amazing woman I've ever met. You have your life so together," followed weeks or months later by, "You're always so busy, it feels like you don't really need me," or "You have such strong opinions about everything, sometimes it's exhausting." He'll create a confusing dynamic where the very qualities he initially found attractive become sources of complaint, leaving you feeling like you can't be yourself without triggering his dissatisfaction. The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his internal conflict between admiration and insecurity. He genuinely values your strength, wisdom, and independence, but those same qualities remind him of what he perceives as his own shortcomings or trigger his fears of not being needed or valued in the relationship. This idealization devaluation cycle is a hallmark of emotional immaturity, a person who lacks the self-awareness to recognize that their attraction to strong qualities is genuine, but their ability to handle those qualities is limited. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you've spent decades becoming authentically yourself, honing your strengths, developing your voice, and cultivating self-sufficiency. When someone first celebrates these qualities and then criticizes them, it triggers your confusion because you're being asked to shrink yourself to accommodate their insecurity. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to recognize it early and address it directly. When he begins to devalue qualities he previously admired, say something like, "I remember when you first told you loved how independent I was. Now you're suggesting that same independence is a problem in our relationship. I need you to be honest with yourself about whether you truly want a partner who is self-sufficient and experienced, or if you're looking for someone who will be more dependent on you." Then observe his response. Does he acknowledge the contradiction in his statements? Does he take responsibility for his shifting perspective, or does he become defensive and continue to frame your qualities as problematic? Your independence, experience, and self-sufficiency aren't up for negotiation. They're part of who you are. A man who's ready for a mature relationship will celebrate these qualities consistently, not vacillate between admiration and criticism. This doesn't mean you're being rigid. It means you're protecting your authentic self from being diminished to accommodate someone else's insecurity. Number 6. The past relationship projection pattern. This happens when a man projects dynamics from his previous relationships onto your connection, pulling away when something reminds him of a past hurt or conflict. He's not responding to you as an individual, but to a composite of his past experiences, particularly if he's been hurt in previous relationships with women who share some of your qualities. In practice, this looks like him becoming distant or suspicious when you do something that vaguely resembles what a previous partner did, perhaps needing alone time, expressing strong opinions, or setting boundaries. He might say things like, "My ex used to do that same thing, and it always meant she was pulling away." Or, "When you get quiet like that, it reminds me of how my ex would get before starting a fight." He's not seeing you clearly, but through the filter of his past wounds, and he pulls away as a protective measure against experiencing similar pain. The psychological mechanism at play here is what therapists call projection, attributing to others the feelings, motives, or behaviors that actually originate within oneself or one's past experiences. When a man hasn't processed his previous relationship wounds, he's likely to unconsciously project those dynamics onto new connections, particularly with women who share some characteristics with previous partners. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you've likely had your own relationship experiences and have developed patterns of communication and behavior that work for you. When he projects his past onto your present, it triggers your frustration because you're being held responsible for wounds you didn't create and patterns you don't exhibit. You're not interested in paying the price for someone else's mistakes or being viewed through the distorted lens of their past. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to gently but firmly distinguish yourself from his past. Say something like, "I hear that what I'm doing reminds you of something your ex used to do, but I'm not your ex. I need you to respond to who I am and what I'm actually doing, not to your memories of someone else." If you're not able to separate your past experiences from our present connection, that's something you'll need to work through, perhaps with professional support. Then observe whether he's able to see you as an individual rather than as a trigger for his past wounds. A man who's ready for a mature relationship will recognize when he's projecting and will take responsibility for separating his past from his present. A man who's still stuck in his past will continue to view you through the distorted lens of his previous experiences. This doesn't mean you're being unsympathetic. It means you're insisting on being seen and responded to as the unique individual you are, not as a reflection of someone else's history. Number 7. The timing misalignment pattern. This occurs when a man genuinely cares for you, but feels that the timing isn't right for the kind of serious relationship you're seeking. He might be dealing with career challenges, family responsibilities, personal growth work, or other life circumstances that make him feel unable to offer the level of commitment you deserve. In practice, this looks like him expressing genuine affection and connection while simultaneously creating distance or maintaining uncertainty about the future. He might say things like, "I really care about you, but with everything going on at work right now, I just can't give a relationship the attention it deserves." Or, "I can see a future with you, but I need to get some things in order first." He's not pulling away because he doesn't value you. He's pulling away because he recognizes a mismatch between his current capacity and your reasonable expectations. The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his self-awareness combined with his fear of disappointing you. He genuinely values what you offer as a mature woman, your clarity about what you want, your emotional availability, your readiness for a committed relationship. But he honestly doesn't feel equipped to meet those expectations in his current life circumstances. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you're typically not interested in indefinite waiting or undefined relationships. You've reached a stage in life where you value clarity and forward movement, and you're less willing to invest in connections that don't have a clear trajectory toward greater commitment. When he pulls away due to timing misalignment, it triggers your disappointment because you recognize the genuine connection, but also the practical barriers to it developing into the kind of relationship you're seeking. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to honor both your feelings and your boundaries. Acknowledge the genuine connection while maintaining clarity about what you need. Say something like, "I appreciate your honesty about where you are right now, and I share your feelings of connection. At the same time, I'm not in a place in my life where I'm interested in an indefinite wait-and-see situation. I need a relationship that can move forward with clarity and commitment. If and when you feel ready for that kind of connection, I'm open to hearing from you, but I won't put my life on hold waiting for your timing to align." Then follow through. Continue living your full life, remaining open to other connections, and not investing emotional energy in waiting for him to be ready. A man who genuinely values you will understand and respect your boundaries. A man who's using timing as an excuse to avoid commitment will reveal his true intentions through his continued inaction. This doesn't mean you're being impatient. It means you're valuing your time and emotional energy enough to invest them where they can lead to the kind of relationship you're seeking. I need you to understand something crucial. When men pull away from mature women, even when they seem to be falling in love, it's rarely about the woman's worth or desirability. It's almost always about the man's capacity, his emotional maturity, his self-awareness, his readiness for the kind of relationship that a mature woman naturally offers and expects. The confusion and hurt you feel when someone pulls away isn't a sign that you've done something wrong. It's a sign that you've invested in someone who wasn't equipped to receive what you have to offer. This isn't about blaming you or blaming him. It's about recognizing the fundamental mismatch between what you're ready to give and what he's ready to receive. The most painful part of this dynamic isn't the withdrawal itself. It's the false hope that his words of affection create, the confusion between his expressed feelings and his inconsistent actions. This confusion is designed, whether consciously or unconsciously, to keep you available without requiring him to offer the clarity and consistency you deserve. Your task isn't to figure out how to make him stay. It's to recognize when his capacity doesn't match your worth and to choose yourself over the potential of what might be if only he were different. Number 8. The intimacy reversal pattern. This happens when a man initially pursues you for the very qualities that define mature womanhood: emotional availability, life experience, self-awareness, relational skills, only to later frame those same qualities as problematic. He'll first be drawn to your depth and stability, then later suggest that you're too serious, too intense, or moving too fast. In practice, this looks like him saying things like, "I love how you're not into games and you say what you mean," followed weeks or months later by, "You analyze everything so much, can't we just keep things simple?" He'll create a confusing dynamic where the emotional intelligence and relational clarity that initially attracted him become sources of complaint, leaving you feeling like you're being punished for being exactly who you presented yourself to be from the beginning. Let me paint a more detailed picture of how this pattern unfolds in real life. In the beginning, he's captivated by your emotional intelligence. He might say things like, "It's so refreshing to be with someone who actually communicates," or, "I've never met a woman who understands herself as well as you do." He praises your ability to navigate difficult conversations with grace, your willingness to be vulnerable, and your capacity to create emotional safety. During these early stages, he positions himself as someone who values depth and substance, someone who's tired of superficial connections and is ready for something meaningful. He might share how previous partners were emotionally unavailable or how he's always longed for a partner who could meet him on an emotional level. Then comes the reversal. It often happens gradually, sometimes so subtly that you question whether you're imagining it. He might start with gentle teasing about how you always have to have a deep conversation about everything. Then it escalates to more direct criticism. Why do we have to analyze every little thing? Or can't we just have fun without making it so complicated? He might say things like, "I feel like I'm in therapy with you sometimes," or "You're always trying to get to the bottom of things. Can't we just enjoy the moment?" These comments are designed to make you feel like your natural way of being is somehow excessive or problematic. What makes this pattern particularly confusing is that it often coincides with him expressing continued affection for you. He might say, "I love you so much, but sometimes you're just too intense," or "I'm crazy about you, but we need to keep things lighter." This creates a cognitive dissonance that leaves you questioning yourself. Does he love me but not like who I am? Am I really too much? Should I change to make him happy? The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his internal conflict between what he thinks he wants and what he's actually equipped to handle. He genuinely believes he wants a mature, emotionally available partner, someone who can offer depth, stability, and clear communication. But when faced with the reality of what such a partnership requires, vulnerability, emotional responsibility, consistent effort, he finds himself overwhelmed or inadequate. Rather than acknowledging his own limitations, he reframes your strengths as excesses, suggesting that the very qualities he sought are somehow too much. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you've invested years in developing your emotional intelligence and relational skills. You've likely done the work of therapy, self-reflection, and personal growth precisely so you could be a better partner and create healthier relationships. You're not interested in pretending to be less than you are or dimming your light to make someone else comfortable with their own emotional limitations. When someone criticizes these hard-won qualities, it feels like a rejection of not just who you are, but of the journey you've taken to become this person. What's happening psychologically is that he's experiencing what therapists call approach avoidance conflict. He's drawn to the benefits of emotional intimacy, connection, understanding, support, but he's simultaneously afraid of what it demands of him. Emotional intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires feeling worthy of love and connection. If he has unresolved wounds or insecurities about his own worthiness, being with someone who is emotionally fluent will constantly trigger those feelings. Rather than doing his own inner work to address these feelings, he finds it easier to position your emotional intelligence as the problem. Another psychological factor at play is what's known as cognitive dissonance reduction. He holds two contradictory beliefs. "I want an emotionally mature partner," and "I'm uncomfortable with the level of emotional engagement this relationship requires." To reduce the discomfort of this contradiction, he changes one of the beliefs. Actually, she's not emotionally mature, she's too much, too intense, too analytical. By reframing your strengths as excesses, he can maintain his self-image as someone who wants a healthy relationship while avoiding the discomfort of actual emotional intimacy. This pattern is also often rooted in what psychologists call projection. He's projecting his own discomfort with emotions onto you, making it seem like the problem is your emotional expression rather than his emotional avoidance. When he says, "You're too analytical," what he might really mean is, "I'm uncomfortable with the level of self-awareness this relationship requires of me." When he says, "You're too intense," what he might really mean is, "I'm overwhelmed by the emotions you're able to access that I can't." To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to recognize the contradiction and address it directly. Say something like, "I remember when you first told me you loved how direct and emotionally available I am." Now you're suggesting those same qualities are too much for this relationship. I need you to be honest with yourself about whether you truly want a partner who is emotionally mature and communicative, or if you're actually looking for something less demanding. Either is fine, but I need clarity so I can make informed decisions about where to invest my energy. Then observe his response. Does he acknowledge the contradiction in his statements? Does he take responsibility for his shifting perspective? Or does he continue to frame your natural maturity as excessive? His response will tell you everything you need to know about whether he's capable of the kind of relationship you're seeking. It's also important to set clear boundaries around how you're willing to be spoken to. You might say, "I'm open to hearing about your feelings and needs in this relationship, but I'm not willing to be criticized for who I am. My emotional intelligence and communication skills aren't up for negotiation. They're part of who I am and what I offer. If those qualities don't work for you, then we may not be compatible." Another protective strategy is to maintain your connections with people who value your emotional intelligence. When someone starts criticizing your natural way of being, it's easy to start questioning yourself. Maintaining relationships with friends, family, or community members who appreciate your depth and emotional fluency can serve as an important reality check, reminding you that your qualities are indeed valuable, not excessive. It's also helpful to reflect on whether this is a pattern in your relationships. Have previous partners also criticized you for being too much or too intense? If so, this might indicate that you're attracted to men who aren't emotionally equipped for the kind of relationship you're offering. Recognizing this pattern can help you make different choices in the future. Remember this: your emotional intelligence and relational skills aren't up for negotiation. They're part of who you are and what you offer. A man who's ready for a mature relationship will celebrate these qualities consistently, not vacillate between admiration and criticism. He'll recognize that your emotional fluency is a gift that enhances the relationship, not a burden that detracts from it. This doesn't mean you're being inflexible. It means you're protecting your authentic self from being pathologized to accommodate someone else's emotional limitations. You're not asking him to change who he is. You're asking him to be honest about what he actually wants and can handle in a relationship. And you're choosing to invest your time and energy in someone who values what you offer, rather than someone who asks you to diminish yourself to make him comfortable. Number 9. The competence paradox pattern. This occurs when a man is initially attracted to your competence, independence, and life experience, but later feels threatened or diminished by those same qualities. He'll first express admiration for your accomplishments and self-sufficiency, then later make comments that suggest your competence somehow emasculates him or makes him feel unnecessary. In practice, this looks like him saying things like, "It's so impressive how you've built your career and handle everything so well," followed by, "I feel like you don't really need me for anything," or, "You have such a strong handle on your life, sometimes I wonder where I fit in." He'll create a confusing dynamic where the very independence and capability that initially attracted him becomes sources of insecurity, leaving you feeling like you have to choose between being competent and being desirable. Let me walk you through how this pattern typically unfolds. In the beginning stages of the relationship, he's genuinely captivated by your competence and independence. He might say things like, "I've never met a woman who has her life so together," or, "It's amazing how you've built your career from the ground up." He praises your financial independence, your professional accomplishments, your ability to handle practical matters with ease, and your general self-sufficiency. During these early conversations, he positions himself as someone who values a strong, capable partner, someone who's not looking for a damsel in distress, but rather an equal who can stand beside him. As the relationship progresses, however, a shift begins to occur. It often starts subtly, with comments that seem like compliments on the surface but carry an undertone of discomfort. He might say things like, "You're so independent, I bet you don't need a man for anything," or, "You handle everything so well, sometimes I feel like there's nothing left for me to do." These comments gradually escalate into more direct expressions of insecurity. "I feel like you'd be fine whether I was here or not," or, "Sometimes I wonder if you even need me at all." What makes this pattern particularly confusing is that it often coincides with him expressing continued admiration for your accomplishments. He might say, "I'm so proud of what you've achieved professionally, but I sometimes feel like I'm living in your shadow," or, "I love how capable you are, but it makes me feel less masculine." This creates a cognitive dissonance that leaves you questioning yourself. Does he admire my success or resent it? Am I supposed to apologize for being competent? Should I pretend to need help with things I can easily handle myself? The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his internalized beliefs about masculinity and his sense of self-worth. Many men have been conditioned to derive value from being needed, from fixing problems, from providing solutions. When they encounter a woman who is genuinely competent and self-sufficient, particularly a mature woman who has had decades to develop her skills and resources, they may struggle to find their place in the relationship. This isn't because competence is inherently unattractive. It's because they haven't developed a sense of self-worth that isn't tied to being needed in specific, traditional ways. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you've likely spent years cultivating competence and independence precisely so you wouldn't need to rely on others for your well-being. You've built a career, managed finances, maintained a home, raised children perhaps, navigated challenges, all without depending on a partner for your basic needs. When someone suggests that your competence makes you less desirable, it triggers your frustration because you're being asked to diminish yourself to accommodate someone else's limited definition of value. What's happening psychologically is that he's experiencing a threat to his masculine identity. In traditional gender scripts, masculinity is often defined by provision, protection, and problem-solving. When you're fully capable of providing for yourself, protecting yourself, and solving your own problems, he may feel like there's no role for him to fill in the relationship. This doesn't necessarily mean he consciously wants you to be helpless. It means he hasn't developed a more evolved understanding of masculinity that isn't tied to these traditional roles. Another psychological factor at play is what's known as comparison-based self-evaluation. He's comparing himself to you and finding himself wanting. Rather than being inspired by your competence or seeing it as a testament to your character, he views it as a reflection of his own perceived inadequacies. This is particularly true if he's struggled with his career or finances, or if he's at a different stage of professional development. Your success doesn't cause his struggles, but it may illuminate them in a way that makes him uncomfortable. This pattern is also often rooted in what psychologists call zero-sum thinking, the belief that if one person is winning, the other must be losing. He might unconsciously view your competence as taking away from his ability to be competent in the relationship. Rather than seeing your capabilities as complementary to his, he sees them as competitive. This is a limited perspective that fails to recognize that in a healthy partnership, both people bring their strengths to create something greater than the sum of its parts. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to reframe the conversation around partnership rather than need. Say something like, "I hear that my competence and independence sometimes make you feel unnecessary. I want to be clear that I don't want to be in a relationship where I need someone to take care of me. I want to be in a relationship where we choose each other as partners, equals who enhance each other's lives but don't complete each other. Your value in this relationship isn't about what you can do for me, it's about who you are and how we experience life together." Then observe whether he can expand his understanding of partnership beyond traditional gender roles and needs-based dynamics. Does he show curiosity about what a more evolved partnership might look like? Does he express willingness to challenge his conditioning around masculinity? Or does he continue to frame your competence as a threat to his identity? It's also important to validate his feelings while maintaining your boundaries. You might say, "I understand that my independence might trigger some feelings for you, and I'm open to talking about that, but I'm not willing to apologize for being competent or pretend to be less capable than I am. I hope we can find a way for both of us to feel valued in this relationship without either of us having to diminish ourselves." Another protective strategy is to explicitly invite him into your life in ways that don't require you to pretend incompetence. You might say, "I don't need you to take care of me, but I do want you to be my partner. I want to share my life with you, not because I can't handle it on my own, but because experiencing it together is richer than experiencing it alone. There's a difference between needing someone and wanting someone, and I want you." It can also be helpful to create specific opportunities for him to contribute that feel meaningful to both of you. This isn't about pretending you can't do things yourself. It's about consciously choosing to share responsibilities and create interdependence. For example, you might say, "I'm fully capable of managing our finances, but I'd love for us to work on our financial goals together as a team." Or, "I can handle home repairs on my own, but I'd prefer to share that responsibility with you." Remember this: a man who's ready for a mature relationship will recognize that your competence doesn't diminish his value. It enhances the potential for an equal partnership. He'll see your capabilities as a testament to your character, not as a threat to his identity. He'll understand that partnership isn't about need, it's about choice, mutual support, and shared experience. A man who's stuck in traditional masculinity scripts will continue to feel threatened by your independence. He'll struggle to find his place in the relationship unless you create artificial dependencies that allow him to feel needed in traditional ways. This isn't a path to a healthy partnership. It's a path to resentment, as you gradually shrink yourself to accommodate his insecurities. This doesn't mean you're being dismissive. It means you're inviting him into a more evolved understanding of partnership where both people can be fully themselves. You're not asking him to change who he is. You're asking him to expand his definition of what it means to be a partner and a man. And you're choosing to invest your time and energy in someone who celebrates your competence rather than feeling threatened by it. Number 10. The emotional depth disparity pattern. This happens when a man is initially drawn to your emotional depth and self-awareness, but later feels overwhelmed or inadequate in the face of that depth. He'll first appreciate your ability to name emotions, reflect on patterns, and communicate clearly, then later suggest that you're too deep, too analytical, or too in your head. In practice, this looks like him saying things like, "I love how you understand yourself so well and can articulate what you're feeling," followed by, "Do you have to analyze every feeling? Can't we just experience things without picking them apart?" He'll create a confusing dynamic where the emotional intelligence that initially attracted him becomes a source of discomfort, leaving you feeling like you have to choose between being self-aware and being easygoing. Let me describe how this pattern typically manifests in a relationship. In the beginning, he's fascinated by your emotional depth and self-awareness. He might say things like, "I've never met anyone who can explain their feelings so clearly," or "It's amazing how you understand why you react the way you do." He expresses admiration for your ability to navigate complex emotions, your insight into relationship dynamics, and your willingness to engage in deep conversations about feelings and motivations. During these early interactions, he positions himself as someone who values emotional intelligence and wants to grow in this area himself. As the relationship progresses, however, a shift begins to occur. It often starts with gentle teasing about how you overthink things or analyze everything. Then it escalates to more direct criticism. "Why do we have to talk about our feelings all the time?" Or, "Can't we just enjoy things without making them so complicated?" He might say things like, "You're always in your head. Can't you just relax and feel?" Or, "Sometimes I feel like I'm in a therapy session instead of a relationship." These comments are designed to make you feel like your natural emotional depth is somehow excessive or problematic. What makes this pattern particularly confusing is that it often coincides with him expressing continued appreciation for your insight. He might say, "I love how you understand me better than I understand myself, but sometimes it's overwhelming." Or, "Your emotional intelligence is one of the things I love about you, but sometimes it feels like too much." This creates a cognitive dissonance that leaves you questioning yourself. Does he value my emotional depth or find it burdensome? Am I supposed to turn off a fundamental part of who I am? Should I pretend to be less emotionally aware than I am? The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his discomfort with his own emotional landscape. Many men, particularly those who haven't done extensive personal growth work, have limited experience with identifying, processing, and communicating emotions. When they encounter a woman who is emotionally fluent, particularly a mature woman who has had decades to develop self-awareness, they may feel inadequate or overwhelmed by the contrast. This isn't because emotional depth is inherently off-putting. It's because they haven't developed the tools to meet that depth with equal fluency. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you've likely invested significant time and energy in developing emotional intelligence precisely because you understand its value in creating meaningful connections. You've probably done therapy, read self-help books, attended workshops, or engaged in other forms of personal growth to become more self-aware and emotionally skilled. When someone suggests that your emotional awareness is excessive, it triggers your frustration because you're being asked to diminish a core aspect of who you are. What's happening psychologically is that he's experiencing what therapists call emotional mismatch. He's attracted to the benefits of emotional depth, understanding, connection, insight, but he's simultaneously intimidated by what it demands of him. Emotional depth requires vulnerability, self-reflection, and the willingness to sit with uncomfortable feelings. If he hasn't developed these capacities, being with someone who is emotionally fluent will constantly highlight his own limitations. Rather than doing his own emotional work, he finds it easier to position your emotional depth as the problem. Another psychological factor at play is what's known as defensive devaluation. When we feel inadequate in comparison to someone else, we often devalue the very quality that makes us feel inadequate. He might unconsciously think, "She's more emotionally aware than I am, which makes me feel deficient." Therefore, emotional awareness isn't actually valuable. It's too much, too analytical, too in her head. By devaluing your emotional depth, he can protect his self-esteem without having to do the work of developing his own emotional capacities. This pattern is also often rooted in what psychologists call emotional phobia, a fear of emotions themselves. Many men are socialized to view emotions as weak, irrational, or dangerous. They learn to suppress their feelings, especially feelings that might be perceived as vulnerable like sadness, fear, or uncertainty. When you're comfortable with the full spectrum of human emotion, it can trigger his own emotional phobia. He might unconsciously view your emotional fluency as threatening to his carefully constructed emotional defenses. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to hold space for different levels of emotional fluency without abandoning your own. Say something like, "I hear that my emotional awareness sometimes feels like too much analysis to you. For me, being able to name and understand my emotions is a core part of who I am. It's how I navigate the world and relationships. I'm not asking you to be just like me, but I am asking you to respect that this is how I operate. If you're interested in developing your own emotional awareness, I'm happy to share what I've learned, but I won't pretend to be less self-aware than I am." Then observe whether he's willing to learn and grow, or whether he continues to frame your emotional depth as excessive. Does he show curiosity about your emotional world? Does he express willingness to develop his own emotional capacities? Or does he continue to criticize your natural way of being? It's also important to validate his feelings while maintaining your boundaries. You might say, "I understand that my emotional depth might feel overwhelming at times, especially if it's different from how you're used to operating. I'm willing to go at a pace that feels comfortable for you, but I'm not willing to shut down a fundamental part of who I am. I hope we can find a way to honor both of our emotional styles." Another protective strategy is to explicitly differentiate between analysis and feeling. You might say, "For me, understanding my emotions doesn't replace feeling them. It enhances my ability to feel them fully. When I can name what I'm experiencing, I can actually be more present with it, not less. It's not about being in my head instead of my heart. It's about using my head to understand what my heart is experiencing." It can also be helpful to create specific opportunities for emotional connection that feel accessible to both of you. This might mean finding activities that facilitate emotional connection without requiring extensive verbal analysis, such as listening to music together, watching meaningful films, or engaging in shared experiences that evoke emotions naturally. Remember this: a man who's ready for a mature relationship will recognize that emotional fluency is a skill, not a threat, and will either appreciate your depth or be willing to develop his own. He'll understand that emotional intelligence isn't about overthinking, it's about understanding. He'll see your emotional awareness as a gift that enhances the relationship, not as a burden that detracts from it. A man who's emotionally underdeveloped will continue to feel threatened by your self-awareness. He'll struggle to meet you on an emotional level unless you diminish yourself to match his comfort zone. This isn't a path to a healthy partnership. It's a path to resentment as you gradually suppress your natural emotional depth to accommodate his limitations. This doesn't mean you're being condescending. It means you're honoring your own emotional journey while inviting him to respect it, even if he doesn't fully understand it yet. You're not asking him to change who he is. You're asking him to respect who you are. And you're choosing to invest your time and energy in someone who celebrates your emotional depth rather than feeling intimidated by it. In all three of these patterns, intimacy reversal, competence paradox, and emotional depth disparity, the underlying issue is the same. A man who is initially attracted to the qualities of a mature woman but ultimately feels inadequate in the face of those qualities. He's drawn to your emotional intelligence, your competence, your self-awareness, but he's not equipped to meet you at that level. Rather than doing his own growth work, he asks you to diminish yourself to match his limitations. Your task isn't to shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. Your task is to recognize when someone is asking you to abandon core aspects of who you are and to choose yourself over the potential of what might be if only he were different. Real partnership doesn't require you to be less than you are. It requires both people to be fully themselves, celebrating each other's strengths rather than feeling threatened by them. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to hold space for different levels of emotional fluency without abandoning your own. Say something like, "I hear that my emotional awareness sometimes feels like too much analysis to you. For me, being able to name and understand my emotions is a core part of who I am. It's how I navigate the world and relationships. I'm not asking you to be just like me, but I am asking you to respect that this is how I operate." If you're interested in developing your own emotional awareness, I'm happy to share what I've learned, but I won't pretend to be less self-aware than I am. Then, observe whether he's willing to learn and grow, or whether he continues to frame your emotional depth as excessive. A man who's ready for a mature relationship will recognize that emotional fluency is a skill, not a threat, and will either appreciate your depth or be willing to develop his own. A man who's emotionally underdeveloped will continue to feel threatened by your self-awareness. This doesn't mean you're being condescending. It means you're honoring your own emotional journey while inviting him to respect it, even if he doesn't fully understand it yet. Number 11. The future fear pattern. This occurs when a man is genuinely enjoying the present connection with you but becomes anxious or withdraws when the relationship naturally moves toward greater commitment and future planning. He'll be fully present and engaged in day-to-day interactions but becomes evasive or distant when conversations about the future arise. In practice, this looks like him saying things like, "I love spending time with you and I feel so connected when we're together," followed by avoidance or deflection when you try to discuss future plans, even simple ones like a vacation a few months away. He might say, "Why do we need to plan so far ahead? Can't we just enjoy what we have right now?" Or, "I'm not really a planner, I prefer to be spontaneous." He's not necessarily opposed to a future with you. He's afraid of what that future might require of him. The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his fear of losing himself or his freedom in the context of a committed relationship. Many men have been conditioned to view commitment as a form of constraint rather than expansion, a narrowing of possibilities rather than an enrichment of experience. When they encounter a woman with whom they genuinely see a future, particularly a mature woman who has clarity about what she wants in a long-term partnership, they may feel ambivalent, torn between the desire for connection and the fear of constraint. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you're typically not interested in indefinite casual connections. You've reached a stage in life where you value forward movement and are less willing to invest in relationships that don't have a clear trajectory toward greater commitment. When he pulls away at the mention of the future, it triggers your impatience because you recognize the inconsistency between his present enjoyment and his future avoidance. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to address the fear without minimizing your own needs. Say something like, "I notice that you're really present and engaged when we're together, but you become uncomfortable when we talk about the future. I want you to know that for me, planning ahead isn't about constraining our relationship. It's about creating shared experiences to look forward to. I'm not asking you to commit to a lifetime tomorrow, but I am asking you to be willing to talk about and plan for a future together, even if it's just the next few months. Then observe whether he can acknowledge his fear and work through it, or whether he continues to avoid future conversations. A man who's ready for a mature relationship will recognize that commitment doesn't mean losing himself. It means expanding himself through partnership. A man who's committed to his freedom above all else will continue to view future planning as a threat rather than an opportunity. This doesn't mean you're being pushy. It means you're asking for the same level of investment in the future that you're bringing to the relationship. Number 12. The healing incompleteness pattern. This happens when a man is drawn to your emotional stability and wisdom, but hasn't completed his own healing from past wounds, making him unable to fully receive or reciprocate the depth of connection you offer. He'll initially be attracted to your wholeness and self-awareness, then later pull away when he realizes how much inner work he still needs to do to meet you at your level. In practice, this looks like him saying things like, "You're so grounded and self-aware, I love that about you," followed by withdrawal or statements like, "I have some things I need to work through before I can be the partner you deserve," or "I'm realizing I'm not as healed as I thought I was." He's not rejecting you. He's recognizing his own limitations in the face of your wholeness. The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in his self-awareness combined with his fear of not being enough. He genuinely values your emotional health and wisdom. But when faced with the reality of what it means to be in a relationship with someone who is genuinely whole, he recognizes his own unfinished business. This isn't because you're intimidating, it's because your wholeness illuminates the areas where he still needs growth. This pattern particularly affects mature women because you've likely invested significant time and energy in your own healing and personal development. You're not looking for someone to complete you or rescue you. You're looking for an equal partner who has done his own work and can meet you at your level. When he pulls away due to healing incompleteness, it triggers your disappointment because you recognize the genuine connection, but also the reality that he's not yet ready for the kind of partnership you're seeking. To protect yourself from this pattern, you need to honor both your feelings and your boundaries. Acknowledge the genuine connection while maintaining clarity about what you need. Say something like, "I appreciate your honesty about where you are in your healing journey, and I value the connection we share. At the same time, I'm not in a place in my life where I'm interested in waiting for someone to complete their healing work. I need a partner who is already whole and ready to build from that place of wholeness together. I hope you'll continue your healing work, and I wish you the best, but I can't put my relationship journey on hold while you complete yours." Then follow through. Continue living your full life, remaining open to connections with those who are ready for the kind of partnership you're seeking. A man who genuinely values you will understand and respect your boundaries. A man who's using healing as an excuse to avoid commitment will reveal his true intentions through his continued inaction. This doesn't mean you're being unsupportive. It means you're valuing your time and emotional energy enough to invest them where they can lead to the kind of relationship you're seeking. Your time matters. Your peace matters. Your standards matter. These aren't just nice sentiments. They're the foundation of protecting your heart while staying open to real love. When a man pulls away from you, even when he seems to be falling in love, it's not a reflection of your worth or desirability. It's a reflection of his capacity, his readiness, his emotional maturity. Your task isn't to figure out how to make him stay or how to fix what's broken. Your task is to recognize when someone's capacity doesn't match your worth and to choose yourself over the potential of what might be, if only he were different. Real love doesn't punish you for asking for clarity. Real connection doesn't require you to diminish yourself to make someone else comfortable. Real partnership doesn't demand that you abandon your standards or compromise your boundaries. When someone pulls away, let them. When someone creates confusion, step back. When someone offers inconsistency, choose your peace. This isn't about becoming cynical or closing your heart. It's about becoming discerning enough to recognize when someone is worthy of the exceptional love you have to offer. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps YouTube share this message with more women who need to hear it. Leave a comment below sharing which pattern you've experienced most often in your relationships. Your insight might be exactly what another woman needs to feel less alone. Share this video with someone in your life who's been through the confusion of someone pulling away. Sometimes it's easier to recognize patterns in others' situations before we can see them in our own. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future content about protecting your heart while staying open to genuine connection. And if you're able, consider leaving a super thank you. Your support helps me continue creating content that serves women like you who deserve clarity, respect, and real love. The most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. Trust your intuition. It's been trying to tell you the truth all along. Walk away from confusion without guilt. Your peace is more valuable than any connection that requires you to abandon your clarity. Your worth isn't determined by someone's ability to recognize it. You are exceptional exactly as you are, and you deserve someone who celebrates that consistency, not someone who pulls away from it.